Think of a contract like a journey. It starts with a promise, a deal, right? But every journey has to end. So, how exactly do these legal journeys wrap up? Let's get into it.
You'd probably think it's simple, You do what you promised, and that's it. But in the eyes of the law, there are a bunch of different ways to get to the finish line. Some are neat and tidy, and some, well, they're a lot messier.
The official legal term for this whole process is contract discharge. It's that moment when the deal is officially over, the relationship ends, and all those binding promises you made just dissolve. It's the "we're done here" for any contract. So today we're going to break down the 6 main ways a contract can end. We'll start with the perfect ending, performance, then talk about mutual agreements, impossible situations, broken promises, when the law steps in, and even what happens when you just run out of time.
All right, let's kick things off with the happy ending, the one everybody wants, discharge by performance. This is the ideal scenario where everyone involved does exactly what they agreed to do. Simple as that. Now, performance itself can actually happen in 2 ways. First, you have actual performance. Super straightforward, you deliver the product, I pay you for it, handshake, we're done. But then there's something called attempted performance, or tender. This is where you try to do your part of the deal, but the other person refuses to accept it. In a lot of cases, the law says, hey, you tried, and you can be discharged from your obligation. You did your part. But what happens when things change? Life gets in the way. Sometimes the best way to end a deal isn't to finish it, but for both sides to agree to just change things up, or even call the whole thing off. And that brings us to discharge by agreement. And the law gives us 5 specific ways to do this. There's novation, where you basically swap the old contract for a brand new one. Alteration is just changing a few key terms. Rescission is like hitting the reset button. You completely cancel the contract. Remission is when you agree to accept less than what you were originally owed. And finally, waiver is just when one side decides to let go of a right they were entitled to.
Let's make remission really clear. Say someone owes you 5,000 rupees. You might say to them, look, things are tough. Just give me 2,000 and we'll call it even. The moment you accept that 2,000, the original debt of 5,000 is completely wiped out. The contract is discharged.
Okay, now for a way more dramatic contract ending. Discharge by impossibility. This is for when something totally out of the blue happens that makes it physically or legally impossible to see the deal through. Now, this comes in 2 flavors. You've got initial impossibility, which is a deal that was literally impossible from the get-go. Think a contract to find treasure using magic. That agreement is void from the start. But the more interesting one is supervening impossibility. This is when a perfectly good, valid contract becomes impossible to complete later on because of some random unforeseen event. And the classic textbook case for this is Taylor versus Caldwell. A guy rented a music hall to put on some concerts. But before the first concert could even happen, the entire hall burned to the ground. The court said the contract was discharged. I mean, you can't really hold a concert in a pile of ash, right? The very thing the contract was about was gone, so the obligation was gone too.
Of course, not all contract endings are because of something unavoidable. Sometimes they end because one person just flat out breaks their promise. This is what you might call the ugly breakup of the contract world, the breach. A breach of contract is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. One party fails to hold up their end of the bargain. When that happens, it can kill the contract and give the other person, the wronged party, the right to sue for damages. And with a breach, timing is absolutely everything. An actual breach happens right on the deadline for performance. The DJ for your party just doesn't show up. But an anticipatory breach is when someone tells you ahead of time, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. They're breaking the promise before it's even due. So if someone tells you they're going to breach the contract ahead of time, you've got a strategic choice to make. You have 2 options. 1, you can end the contract immediately, rescind it, and sue for damages right then and there. Or 2, you can keep the contract alive, wait until the performance date, and see if maybe they change their mind. It's a judgment call.
All right, sometimes a contract ends and it has nothing to do with what the parties want or do. Sometimes the law itself just steps in and calls it. This is known as discharge by operation of law. So when does this happen? Well, a few key times. If a contract is for a personal skill, say you hire a specific artist to paint a portrait, and that artist passes away, the contract is discharged. Insolvency or bankruptcy can also do it. Also, if one person secretly makes a major change to the contract without permission, that can void the whole thing. And then there's something called merger. For example, if you're renting an apartment and you end up buying the building, your lease, the lesser right, gets absorbed by your ownership, the superior right, and the rental contract is gone.
And that brings us to our final way a contract can end. This is the quietest one of all. No drama, no disasters, just the ticking of a clock.
See, there's something called the Limitation Act, and it basically puts a deadline on your right to take legal action. If someone breaks a promise to you, you don't have forever to sue them. If you wait too long, beyond that specific time limit set by law, your right to enforce the contract just vanishes. It's discharged because you ran out of time.
So, to wrap it all up, the big takeaway is that contracts don't live forever. Their journey can end perfectly with performance, or it can end amicably through a mutual agreement. It can be cut short by an impossible event or a broken promise, and sometimes it's the law itself, or even just the passage of time that brings the deal to a close. At the end of the day, a contract is a promise written down, a structure for trust. But knowing that these structures all have an endpoint, and sometimes a very unexpected one, is so important. It really makes you think, doesn't it? For all the deals you make, big or small, have you ever really thought about how that journey is going to end?